The Young and the Restless Spoilers Shock. For years, the mystery of Victoria Newman's missing child had lingered like a wound that refused to heal, a shadow that followed her even through moments of triumph. Everyone in Genoa City remembered the tragedy. Her baby with Cole Howard had been taken from her arms mere hours after birth, vanishing without a trace. No ransom note, no leads, no explanation. Only silence. The official reports grew cold, and time forced her to move on, though the ache never left. She had built a life, built empires, loved, lost, and endured, but every so often, when she looked at a mother holding a newborn, the ghost of that night returned. Then came Jordan, the woman who arrived like an angel of deliverance and a serpent in disguise. She brought with her a girl named Claire, claiming she was the missing child, the living miracle who had somehow found her way home after all these years. At first, Victoria resisted hope, she had learned to distrust it. But Jordan presented the DNA results herself, results that matched perfectly, results no one dared to question. After decades of emptiness, Victoria allowed herself to believe again. Claire moved into her life, into her home, into her heart, and the Newman family, cautious but united, accepted her as one of their own. But now, the truth was clawing its way to the surface, and it was far more horrifying than Victoria could have imagined. Jordan had orchestrated everything. The test results, the papers, the backstory, all fabricated with clinical precision. Claire was not her daughter. She was an actress, a broken, desperate young woman hired by Jordan to play the role of the lost child for reasons that even now were tangled in greed, obsession, and revenge. And worst of all, the entire deception had been shielded by fear, because no one dared to challenge Jordan's authority. Her reputation for manipulation stretched across decades. When she spoke, people listened, when she threatened, people obeyed. She had planted herself in the Newman family like poison ivy, smiling as she watched her lies take root. The truth began to surface only after Cole Howard's death. His passing had seemed like a quiet, tragic footnote, a man succumbing to time, his regrets buried with him. But Cole had left behind something far more powerful than his memory, a letter. It had been hidden carefully, sealed away among his private effects, and only recently discovered when his estate was finalized. The letter, written in his distinctive, uneven hand, was addressed to Victoria, though it never reached her directly. Inside it, Cole confessed everything he had uncovered before his death. He had begun to suspect Jordan long ago, had traced inconsistencies in her stories, and finally had gathered enough proof to expose her. He revealed that the girl she called Claire was not their daughter, that Jordan had used her as part of a cruel game designed to infiltrate and ultimately destroy the Newman family from within. But Cole's revelation didn't stop there. He included an address in Los Angeles, and with it, the unthinkable truth, their real daughter was alive. When Victoria first read the letter, her body trembled so violently she nearly dropped it. Every line felt like a blow. The words blurred before her eyes as tears filled them faster than she could blink away. For years, she had carried guilt for not being able to protect her child, for not fighting harder when everyone told her to let go. And now, she learned that the child had been out there all along, growing up under another name, in another family, with no knowledge of the mother who had spent half her life searching for her. The pain was unbearable, but beneath it, a flicker of something else stirred, hope. Nick and Victor were the first to know. Victoria brought the letter to them in the middle of the night, unable to keep the secret another hour. Victor read it twice, his jaw tightening with each line. He had always distrusted Jordan, had warned Victoria that the woman was dangerous, but even he hadn't imagined such cruelty. For him, this wasn't just an attack on his daughter, it was an attack on his family's very identity. He vowed to bring Jordan down and to uncover every accomplice she had, starting with Claire. Nick, torn between anger and compassion, couldn't believe that the young woman they had welcomed could be part of such deception. But when he remembered her hesitations, her vague answers, her strange attachment to Jordan, the puzzle pieces began to fit. Victoria's first instinct was denial. She wanted to believe Claire was a victim too, a pawn manipulated by forces far stronger than herself. But the more she learned, the less she could ignore the pattern. Claire had been too rehearsed, too quick to provide emotional responses, too eager to fit into the family. It wasn't natural, it was calculated. And now, with Cole's letter as undeniable proof, Victoria's entire reality began to crumble. She clutched the DNA report Jordan had arranged and compared it to the files mentioned in the letter. The inconsistencies were glaring once she looked closely: the mismatched sample dates, the falsified lab initials, the digital signatures that didn't match official records. The truth screamed from the page. Everything she had built with Claire was a lie. Armed with this knowledge, Victoria, Nick, and Victor flew to Los Angeles to follow the lead Cole had left behind. The address pointed them to a quiet neighborhood outside the city, where the sound of traffic was distant and the air smelled faintly of sea salt. The house was modest, white walls, ivy climbing the porch, a small garden out front, but something about it radiated warmth. Victoria stood frozen at the gate, afraid to move, afraid to breathe. She had dreamed of this moment for so long that now, when it was finally within reach, she didn't know if she could face it. Nick placed a steadying hand on her shoulder, while Victor stood behind them, silent but solid as ever. A woman answered the door, kind eyes, gentle posture, the look of someone who had spent her life loving deeply. And then, from behind her, a young woman appeared, carrying a stack of books, her hair falling across her face. When she looked up, time seemed to stop. Victoria gasped. The girl's eyes, those unmistakable blue-green eyes, mirrored her own. For a moment, the world vanished. There was only recognition, a connection beyond words, a bloodline rediscovering itself after decades of silence. The adoptive family had known nothing of her origins. They had taken her in as an infant, told only that she had been abandoned, left with a note and a hospital tag that bore no name. They called her Evelyn. She had grown into a thoughtful, compassionate woman, unaware that her entire identity had been built on a stolen beginning. When Victoria finally spoke, her voice broke. She explained everything: who she was, who Cole was, and what had been done to them. Evelyn listened in disbelief, tears streaming down her cheeks as she clutched the pendant she had worn since childhood, the same pendant Victoria recognized instantly as the one her baby had been wearing the day she was taken. Back in Genoa City, the fallout was immediate. Jordan's empire of deceit began to collapse as Victor unleashed his resources. Claire, confronted by the truth, tried to justify herself, claiming she had been forced, that Jordan had threatened her, that she had nowhere else to go. But the damage was done. Victoria could no longer look at her without seeing the lie that had stolen years of her life. For all her remorse, Claire could not undo what she had helped destroy. The confrontation between Victoria and Jordan was inevitable. It took place in the very mansion where Jordan had first declared Claire to be her miracle. Victoria entered not as a victim, but as a woman reborn from grief. Her eyes burned with fury as she read aloud the lines of Cole's letter, every accusation, every proof. Jordan, cornered at last, dropped the pretense. Her charm melted away, replaced by cold defiance. She admitted everything: that she had chosen Claire precisely because she could mold her, that she had orchestrated the DNA test to ensure no one could challenge her, and that she had done it all to destroy the Newman legacy from within. She said it with pride, her voice dripping with the satisfaction of a long game well played. But she underestimated Victor Newman. Within days, Victor's legal team dismantled Jordan's network, freezing her accounts, exposing her false records, and ensuring her influence was eradicated. Jordan was arrested, her mask stripped away for all of Genoa City to see. Claire disappeared soon after, unable to face the shame, and rumors spread that she had fled the country. Victoria, meanwhile, returned to Los Angeles. This time, she wasn't chasing ghosts, she was reclaiming her life. When she knocked on Evelyn's door again, there was no hesitation. The two women embraced, a lifetime of loss and love converging in one long, trembling moment. For the first time in decades, Victoria felt whole. Cole's letter had given her both closure and a beginning, the chance to know the daughter who had lived all along. As the sun set over the Pacific, Victoria stood with her daughter by the water, the waves rolling in soft and steady. Behind them, Nick and Victor watched quietly, knowing that while the Newman family had survived another storm, they had also been changed forever. Genoa City would soon buzz with the aftermath, the fall of Jordan, the exposure of Claire, the miracle of Victoria's reunion, but for now, the world was still. In her hand, Victoria held the faded letter that had started it all, Cole's final words whispering across the page, "You'll find her where the light breaks over the ocean. She is our hope, our peace, our truth." And as the wind carried those words into the horizon, Victoria smiled through her tears, knowing that for the first time in years, the nightmare had ended, and love, at last, had won. The truth had always been a dangerous thing in Genoa City, but this time, it had become lethal. Claire's secret, the one she had built her identity around, was beginning to unravel faster than she could control it. For years, she had lived inside the fragile illusion that she was Victoria Newman's daughter, that she belonged, that her place among the Newmans was her birthright. But deep down, she had always known the foundation of her life was a lie. It began the day she met Jordan, who had plucked her out of obscurity and molded her into a weapon, polished her, trained her, and filled her head with stories about injustice, about how the Newmans had stolen everything from good people like them. Claire had been young, impressionable, hungry for love, and Jordan gave her the kind of affection that came with strings tied around the throat. So she had followed Jordan's plan, step by step, and when Victoria welcomed her with open arms, she told herself that she deserved it, that she was only taking back what fate had once denied her. But when Cole Howard's letter came to light, everything began to collapse. Cole, the quiet, gentle man whose presence had once soothed the storm inside Victoria, had sensed that something wasn't right before his death. He had seen through the performance, through the carefully constructed story that Jordan and Claire had presented to the world. And though he hadn't confronted them directly, he had begun to dig, searching for truth the way a dying man searches for redemption. He had uncovered enough to expose them, and that made him dangerous. Claire knew it. She saw the way his eyes changed when he looked at her, the way he hesitated before speaking, as if weighing whether to reveal what he knew. When she realized that he intended to leave Victoria a letter, the letter that would unmask her, she panicked. She told herself she didn't mean to hurt him, that she only wanted to stop him from leaving. But that night, when Cole fell, when his body hit the marble floor with a sickening sound, something inside her broke. The guilt was instant, but so was the fear. She didn't call for help. She didn't confess. She did what Jordan had trained her to do, she covered it up. She hid the letter, erased every trace of his suspicion, and told herself it had been an accident. And for a while, it worked. Victoria mourned her husband's death as a tragic twist of fate, never suspecting that the young woman sitting beside her, offering comfort and tears, was the reason he was gone. But lies have a way of rotting in silence, and soon the smell of decay began to reach her. Claire had kept Cole's letter hidden for months, locked away in a drawer beneath her clothes, the edges worn from the number of times she'd taken it out just to make sure it still existed. Each time she read it, her heart twisted tighter, because it wasn't just a document, it was judgment, written in Cole's calm, unwavering hand. He had known what she was, what she and Jordan had done. He had written that Victoria deserved the truth, that their real daughter was alive somewhere in Los Angeles, living an honest life while Claire played dress-up in someone else's tragedy. It was that line that haunted her most, the truth will always outlive the lies, Claire. Even you can't stop it. She had scoffed at it once. Now, she hated him for being right. When Victoria finally found the real letter, not the forged one Jordan had provided years earlier, Claire's world imploded. The truth spread like wildfire, Cole's confession, the address in Los Angeles, the proof that the girl who had grown up there was the true child Victoria had lost. For the Newmans, the revelation was devastating but clarifying. For Claire, it was annihilation. The identity she had worn like armor melted away, leaving her raw, exposed, and furious. When Victoria left for Los Angeles to find the girl Cole had named, Claire followed in secret, her rage simmering into madness. She couldn't understand why everything she had done, every lie, every sacrifice, was now being undone by a single piece of paper. She had earned this life, hadn't she? She had played her part, said the right words, loved the right people. She had become the perfect daughter, the perfect Newman. How dare fate take that away? In Los Angeles, Victoria's journey ended where Cole's letter had guided her, a quiet street near the ocean, where the air smelled of salt and jasmine, and the hum of the city felt distant. There, she met Evelyn, her real daughter, and the moment their eyes met, everything in Victoria's world changed. The recognition was instant and undeniable, like a current running through her veins. She saw herself reflected in the girl's face, in the tilt of her head, in the gentle way she spoke. Evelyn was kind, grounded, the opposite of the chaos that had consumed Claire. When Victoria told her the truth, tears flowed freely, but they weren't just tears of grief, they were tears of recognition. For the first time in decades, Victoria felt whole. Nick and Victor, standing nearby, looked on with awe and sorrow, realizing that after years of pain, the Newman family had finally found what was taken from them. But as they embraced, a figure appeared on the edge of the street. Claire stood there, shaking, her face pale and her eyes burning with fury. She watched Victoria hold Evelyn, watched her replace the life she had stolen, and something inside her snapped. The scream that tore from her throat echoed down the quiet block, raw and feral. She shouted that it wasn't fair, that she had lived this life, that she had been the daughter Victoria needed when no one else was there. Her words tumbled out in broken fragments, rage and sorrow indistinguishable. Nick moved to shield Victoria, but Claire didn't lunge. She just stood there, trembling, staring at the family she could no longer claim. The weight of reality crushed her, and in that moment, she wasn't a villain or a victim, just a woman who had built her entire existence on someone else's loss. Victoria tried to speak, her voice shaking as she told Claire that she could still find redemption, that lies didn't have to define her forever. But Claire's laughter, bitter, cracked, cut her off. She told Victoria she had no idea what she'd done to get here, the things she'd given up, the blood on her hands. When she mentioned Cole's name, the look in Victoria's eyes changed. For the first time, the mother's heartbreak turned to horror. Claire saw it too, and for a moment, the mask fell completely. She whispered that she hadn't meant to kill him, that he shouldn't have threatened to expose her, that Jordan had said he would ruin everything. The confession hung in the air, cold and final. Police sirens wailed in the distance, growing louder, but Claire didn't run. She just stood there, staring at Victoria as tears streamed down her face. She said that if Cole hadn't written that letter, none of this would have happened, that maybe they all could have been happy, that she could have been loved. But the moment passed, and when the police arrived, she didn't resist. They took her away quietly, her eyes locked on Victoria until the car door closed. Later, as the sun began to set over the ocean, Victoria sat on the sand beside Evelyn, the sound of waves filling the silence that words could no longer bridge. She held Cole's letter in her hands, its creased paper now smoothed by her touch. She read it again, her tears falling softly as she reached the final lines. If you're reading this, it means the truth has found you. Remember, our daughter carries your heart, even if she doesn't yet know your name. Victoria folded the letter carefully, pressing it to her chest as she looked at the young woman beside her. Evelyn smiled faintly, unsure of what to say, but her presence was enough. Behind them, Nick and Victor stood watching from a distance, their expressions heavy with both relief and sadness. They had reclaimed what was lost, but the cost had been steep, another life shattered, another soul consumed by deceit. Claire's screams still echoed in their minds, a reminder of what lies could do when left unchecked. Back in Genoa City, news of Claire's arrest spread quickly. Jordan, already behind bars, refused to speak, her lips curling in silent satisfaction even as her empire crumbled. The Newman name, though bruised, stood tall once more. And somewhere in the quiet corners of memory, Cole Howard's spirit seemed to linger, the man who had seen through the darkness and left behind a light strong enough to guide the ones he loved home. As night fell, Victoria looked out at the horizon, her hand intertwined with Evelyn's. For the first time in years, she allowed herself to breathe without pain. The daughter she'd mourned had been found, the truth had been spoken, and though the scars would never fade entirely, there was peace at last. And in that peace, somewhere beyond the crashing waves, she felt Cole's presence, not as a ghost haunting her past, but as the quiet promise of redemption fulfilled.